The stars are very important to the setting of Night in the Woods. Much like in our world, constellations serve as a window to mythology and religion. And if you know those two important pieces of background info about any group of people, then you're well on your way to understanding their culture. Even Longest Night, the most frequently referenced in-game holiday, has everything to do with the natural cycle of the stars in the sky. Night in the Woods provides us with several opportunities to learn about the constellations of its world. First, there was the supplemental game Longest Night, where May, Bee, and Greg sit around a fire while Angus describes the constellations in the night sky. Then came Lost Constellation, another supplemental game, which tells the story of Adina Astra, who goes on a journey to reunite with an old friend who passed away and joined the stars. Night in the Woods itself features a callback to Longest Night in Angus's Hangout segment, where everyone's favorite fedora-wearing bear elaborates on a few of the constellations from that game in between revelations about his tragic past. But the heavy lifting for the constellations, this wonderful window into the greater world of Night in the Woods, is handled by Mr. Chazokov. Still, he's more than just a lore encyclopedia. He provides May with a consistent routine, and stands out as one of the few effective authority figures in Possum Springs, and one of the only ones that May truly respects. But before I go on, if you are a Night in the Woods fan, then please be sure to like, subscribe, and consider supporting me with a YouTube channel membership or over on Patreon. My dream is to make these videos full-time someday, and by doing any of those things, you'll be helping make that dream a reality. We meet Mr. Chazokov on day 1, standing on Barney's porch. This is pretty interesting when you consider just how hostile Barney is towards May for the majority of the game. He's always accusing her of trespassing for doing the exact same thing Mr. Chazokov is doing here, which suggests to me that they might be friends. And who wouldn't want to be friends with Mr. Chazokov? He's a likable guy. Though their initial conversation is brief, we learn a few important things about Mr. Chazokov, starting out with some background info on how he knows May. He was one of her teachers when she was in school, and though it's never said at what level he taught May, my best guess is that he was probably one of her high school science teachers. But it is possible that he taught her when she was in middle school, because 6th grade is typically when students learn about space, which he's obviously pretty familiar with. Mr. Chazokov describes May as his best-worst student, something that she herself admits to, saying that she loved the constellations but hated school. This should surprise absolutely no one. I can't imagine May being a fan of academics, aside from the few subjects she has a particular interest in. Fortunately for May, teaching isn't just a job for Mr. Chazokov, it's a way of life. So although May is no longer his student, he still offers to continue to teach her about space by showing her dust stars, constellations that can only be seen in the light of the setting sun. May is of course thrilled to hear this, and he tells her to come to visit him on the roof once he gets his telescope set up later in the week. A few days go by, but after day 4, once the game enters its second act, Mr. Chazokov is all set up and ready to go. From then on, he'll be there every other day, and if May visits him, they'll check out 2 dust stars together. Each one is a constellation tied to the mythology and religion of the in-game universe. Upon finding a dust star, Mr. Chazokov will tell a story about the constellation, while May provides some commentary and occasionally chimes in with a few details of her own. Some of the most memorable dust stars include Castius, Doer the Murderer, Simone the Fighter, and even the famous Adina Astra herself. They're really wonderful segments, and at some point down the line, I'll be doing a series taking a look at each one, with a specific focus on the likely inspiration for each dust star and their connection to the greater narrative of the game. Functionally, they're all small stories that shed light on the culture of Possum Springs and the rest of this unique but familiar rendition of our world the developers created for Night in the Woods. You certainly don't need to know the lore to enjoy this game. It's not Dark Souls, but I do think a side quest like this is a fun way to learn about it and explore some of the core themes as well. We'll talk about this more when I cover the Dust Stars in greater detail, but so many of them, like Simone the Fighter and the Big Snake, touch on themes like standing up for individual rights and the importance of coming together with your community, both of which are concepts that come up throughout the game. But Mr. Chazokov isn't just the game's resident lore librarian. Spending time with him is a key part of May's recovery, both from the bout of mental illness that forced her to return to Possum Springs and an age-old wound that she has yet to recover from. I've spoken about this before, but when you're recovering from any form of mental illness, whether it's depression or addiction, routines are paramount to your success. Looking at dust stars with Mr. Chazokov becomes a part of her routine, and considering it's something that only happens every other day, remembering to follow through does require some extra effort on her part. If May visits him every day and sees all of the constellations, I think you can make the argument that she's established the type of routine that will serve her well as she continues to recover and readjust to life back home. These segments also touch on something deeper, an age-old wound that dates back before the mental health crisis that forced her to leave college, and possibly even before the killer incident, the death of her grandfather. This will be a major topic in my video on May herself, which will serve as the conclusion to this series, but she never really recovered from losing him. The game makes this clear with the opening poem, the very first page in her journal, and the reverential way that she talks about him. And looking up at the stars and talking about constellations is something they used to do together, as evidenced by the events of Lost Constellation. So by learning about the dust stars with Mr. Chazokov, May isn't just participating in an activity she enjoys, or adopting any old routine. She's rekindling an interest she once shared with her grandfather, a person that means more to her than just about anyone else in the world. For May to be willing to do this at all says a lot about the steps she's taking to work through her unaddressed grief, and it speaks volumes about her respect for Mr. Chazokov as well. In his own small way, he's helping May fill the void the loss of her grandfather left in her life. Between this and his job as a teacher, it's fair to say that Mr. Chazokov is a bit of an authority figure to May. And interestingly, if you look across the game, there's a serious lack of effective authority figures in the life of our protagonist and in Possum Springs in general. May has a strained relationship with her parents, and though it improves dramatically by the end of the narrative, it starts out pretty rough. Aunt Molly can't quite crack the mystery of the cult, the mayor only shows up for the Harfest parade, and the city council bickers about everything and targets homeless people as the town decays around them. Compared to them, Mr. Chazokov is an example of a strong, effective authority figure, someone who May continues to respect even though it's been years since he was her teacher. Pastor K stands out for the same reasons, and we'll be talking about her next month. As a teacher myself, I also have to address the fact that this routine surely means as much to Mr. Chazokov as it does to May. For most of us, teaching isn't a job, it's a vocation. We spend countless unpaid hours before and after school working as hard as we can not only to educate our students, but improve their lives as best we can. But school years end, students graduate, and after that, we really don't know what happens next for the kids we've invested so much of our time, talent, and energy in. Many are the times I've wondered if all the effort I spent trying to help a student was really worth it, if I really made a difference at all. For a dedicated teacher, there's almost nothing better than hearing from a student who's graduated and finding out that all your hard work didn't go to waste. May never really tells Mr. Chazokov that he made a difference in her life, but arguably she does something better. She shows him that he made a difference by visiting him to learn about the dust stars. He's surely disappointed that May dropped out of college, as any teacher would be, but I have no doubt that what matters most to him is that May continues to visit his rooftop so he can pass on his knowledge of the constellations to his best, worst student. And that is what makes Mr. Chazokov so important to Night in the Woods. Thanks for watching. Big thanks to Jordi, Jaen, Moreno, and Wolf.Godwin for providing me with the art for my channel and the music for these videos. Big shout out to all my YouTube channel members and Patreon subscribers, including James Pruitt, Raven Lampkin, Corey Matson, Gustavo Balabi, Pythonian, and Reed, who receive early access to my videos thanks to donations of $5 to $10 a month. See you guys next time.